Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. I apologize in advance for the sound of my voice. It seems that my voice has taken a bit of a vacation. Baruch Hashem, so far it seems only to be a little bit of a cold. Okay, so we're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We'll be learning today Mir Hashem Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis. We pick up in the midst of Siman Tov Kuf Nun on the top line of Chav Gimel Amud Beis with Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber, Kol Arba Tzomos Halalu. All of the four taaneisim that we have been discussing, and we've been discussing right now, Asara B'Teves, Tisha B'Av, Tzom Gedalia, and Asara B'Teves. Kol Arba Tzomos Halalu. All of these four fast days, Im Chalu Lihiyos B'Shabbos, should they fall out on Shabbos, Nidchin la'achar haShabbos, they would be postponed until Sunday. Now, right away, in the Mishnah Berurah comments, in Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Ches, Kol Arba Tzomos, the Mechaber said that this halacha applies to all of the four fast days we have been discussing. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Kol Lav Dafka. The word Kol over here, all, is really imprecise. Deloilam ein Asara B'Teves Chal B'Shabbos, because it is not possible for the 10th day of Teves to fall out on a Shabbos the way our calendar is constructed. Kemosha Kasav Siman Tov Chav Ches, like we learned previously in Siman Tov Chav Ches, Sif Beis, where we spoke about the makeup of the Yiddish calendar, and one of the things we said is Asara B'Teves can never fall out on a Shabbos. Now, there is an interesting Dirshu footnote over here. It's not really, I would say, Negeya, because like we just said, Asara B'Teves never falls out on Shabbos. But Reb Chaim Brisker tackles the question of, and what if Asara B'Teves was able to fall out on Shabbos? What would we do then? So if you take a look at Dirshu footnote number 1, it says, Dirshu footnote 21. Dirshu footnote 21. The 10th day of Teves never falls out on Shabbos. If Asara B'Teves somehow was to fall out on Shabbos, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, Reb Chaim Brisker says, B'Shem HaBahag, he brings it down in the name of the Bahag, that we would be obligated to fast the fast of Asara B'Teves on Shabbos. This is true, even though by the other taaneisim, if they fall out on Shabbos, we do postpone them to Sunday. However, if it was possible for Asara B'Teves to fall out on Shabbos, and it indeed did fall out on Shabbos, then we would be mechuyev to fast Asara B'Teves on that very day. We would not postpone it to Sunday. Why is that? Ubiar Agrach Estevarav, Reb Chaim Brisker explains the Bahag, and he says, Shavad ai kishe'iev shalidchais esatainis mutar lehisanos kam b'Shabbos. We find a precedent that when you have a fast that for some reason cannot be postponed, you are allowed to fast on Shabbos. K'moi shamatzanu, this is what we find, shemisanim tanis chaloim. We know the halacha is if somebody has a very frightening dream and he feels that he needs to fast a taaneisim chaloim, he's allowed to fast a taaneisim chaloim on Shabbos. Then he has to fast another fast to get a kapara for the fact that he fasted on Shabbos. But the taaneisim chaloim is held on Shabbos. Ulechein. And therefore, says Reb Chaim Brisker, B'shar tzomos shenikvu machmas haMeurah, by the other taaneisim, by Tisha B'Av, Asara B'Teves, and Tzom Gedalia, which are all taaneisim that commemorate a historical, something that happened, a historical event. Nikva zmanam l'chodesh sheboi iru. The taaneisim was scheduled not so much for the day that the event took place, but for the month that the event took place. Kimavur b'psukim, like the psukim say, because the psukim, and we learned this in the beginning of these halachos, we learned that the pasuk makes reference to Tzoim Haravi, the fast of the 4th month, that's Shiva Asara B'Teves. Tzoim HaChamishi, the fast of the 5th month, that's Tisha B'Av. So you see that the pasuk is Kaiveya the Tainus during the month that the historical event happened, not so much on the day that the historical event happened. And therefore, therefore, should the fast fall out on a Shabbos, we could postpone the fast to Sunday, because the fast is not truly scheduled for that particular day. It just has to be at some point during that month. However, this stands in contrast to Asara B'Teves. Asara B'Teves is not that way. Asara B'Teves is scheduled for the 10th day of Teves. Sheboy Huskar B'Kosuv, because that's what the pasuk says. Now over here it says Re'eh Yecheskel Mem Daled Beis. I believe that that's a mistake. But in any case, Sheboy Huskar B'Kosuv, that's what's mentioned in the pasuk. Shas Cholas HaMotzar, that the beginning of the siege of Yerushalayim, Haisa Be'etzem Hayoim Hazeh Shel Asara B'Teves. The pasuk makes mention that the siege began Be'etzem Hayoim Hazeh on that very day of Asara B'Teves. So because the pasuk mentions Asara B'Teves, Be'etzem Hayoim Hazeh, we need to fast on that day. So even if it would fall out on Shabbos, we would fast on Shabbos. So we can't postpone it, Kam Kishachal B'Shabbos, even should it fall out on Shabbos. Okay, so just an interesting little footnote. All right, Ois Cotton Tess in the Mishnah Berurah, Nidchen Lachar Shabbos. So if the fasts fall out on Shabbos, they are postponed until Sunday. V'loi Kaidim. However, what we do is, let's say Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos, we postpone the fast until Sunday. We don't make the fast early. We don't fast on Friday or fast on Thursday. Because these fasts, Asara B'Teves, Tisha B'Av, Shiva Asara B'Teves, they're commemorating Paranusa. They're commemorating bad happenings that happened to Klal Yisrael, punishment. And we don't want to bring forward a punishment. We postpone a punishment. Okay, now we go to the words of the Ramah, second line in the Shulchan Aruch. Haga, v'imchalu be'erev Shabbos. Let's say the fast falls out on Erev Shabbos. So right away, again, the Chavetz Chaim jumps in Mishnah Berurah's Cotton Yud. V'imchalu be'erev Shabbos. Hailish nagam ken lav davka. These words of the Ramah are also imprecise. The chal ha'arba tzayma gam kein ef shalachol be'erev Shabbos lefi hakvius. The same way the other taaneisim cannot fall out on the same way Asara B'Teves cannot fall out on Shabbos. The other 3 taaneisim, Shiva Asara B'Teves, Tisha B'Av, Tzem Gedalia, cannot fall out on Erev Shabbos. The only taaneisim that can fall out on Erev Shabbos from these 4 taaneisim is Asara B'Teves, like it did this year. So v'imchalu be'erev Shabbos halishta gam kein lav davka. The chala arbot tzaymis gam kein yef shalachol be'erev Shabbos. All of the 4 fast days cannot fall out on Erev Shabbos. L'fi hakviyas hamavur le'el b'siman tov chav ches, according to the makeup of the calendar that we learned in Siman tov chav ches. Kiyam Asara B'Teves balvad. Asara B'Teves is the only one of these 4 taaneisim that could possibly fall out on Erev Shabbos. So now let's go back to the Ramah. So the Ramah says, v'imchalu be'erev Shabbos. Should Asara B'Teves fall out on Erev Shabbos like it did this past year? Kairim b'shachris u'mincha v'yichal. We do lane the Kriyas HaTorah of a Titus Tzibur, both by Shachris and by Mincha. We lane v'yichal. And this is interesting because the truth is that this seems to stand in contrast to a Mishnah in Masechtas Tainus. The Mishnah in Masechtas Tainus is discussing the Ma'amodim, the groups of people that were in each city in Eretz Yisrael during the time of the Beis Hamikdash, who had like a Yom Tov. Klal Yisrael was, the Yisraelim were divided up into Ma'amodim, and there were groups of people who each took a week, and they kind of had a Yom Tov, and they represented Klal Yisrael standing over the Karbanos Tzibur that are being brought for Klal Yisrael in the Beis Hamikdash. And it says that they didn't lane and they didn't fast on Erev Shabbos by Mincha. Excuse me. Sorry about the interruption. But it seems that on a taaneisim tzibur like Asara B'Teves, even though it's Erev Shabbos and the laning of Vayichal by Mincha seems to be inappropriate for late in the afternoon on Erev Shabbos, still in all the Ramah says Kairim b'Shachris and Mincha Vayichal. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud Aleph b'Shachris and Mincha Vayichal for hu adin da'imar shliach tzibur aneinu ben goyel l'roifei. And so too, the Shliach Tzibur would say the tefillah of Anenu between the bracha of Goel Yisrael and Rifa'enu. Aval einoim rim viduyim unefilas apayim b'mincha. However, we don't say vidui, we don't say Hashamnu, we don't say the Shalish Esrei Midas, and we don't say nefilas apayim, we don't say Tachdon by Mincha and Erev Shabbos, Lefishu Erev Shabbos. Umitam zen, for the same reason, ein lasois b'Erev Shabbos yom kippur katan b'im Rosh Chodesh b'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, many people have the minhag of reciting the tefillas of Yom Kippur Katan on Erev Rosh Chodesh, but if Rosh Chodesh is a Shabbos, we don't say the tefillas of Yom Kippur Katan on Erev Shabbos. Kiyam b'Yom Chamishi shalafonov. Rather, we would hold the tefillas of Yom Kippur Katan on Thursday. Levi she'ein lo meslichas gam viduyim b'Erev Shabbos b'mincha. Continues the Ramah. V'im yesh chuppah b'yom ha'tainus. We know that in days gone by, it was very common to make a chuppah, to make a chasana on Erev Shabbos, and the Friday night Shabbos meal would actually be the Suda of the chasana. Anyway, on Shabbos you're making a beautiful Suda, so that would be the chasana Suda for the close family. But they didn't make it at another time, because if they made it on a different day, they would have to make a special Suda, and they were poverty-stricken, they didn't have the funds for that. So says the Ramah, V'em yesh chuppah b'yom ha'tainus b'Erev Shabbos. Let's say you're making a chasana, you're making a chuppah on the day of a tainus on Erev Shabbos. So Asara B'Teves fell out on Erev Shabbos, and you're going to make a chuppah on Erev Shabbos, and you're going to make the Suda that night. Noihagid lihispalal mincha v'likrais vayichal. The minhag is that in that case, you daven mincha, you lein vayichal, va'achakach oisen chuppah, and only after you already completed the tefillos and the kriyas HaTorah of the taaneisim tzibur, that's when you make the chuppah after mincha. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud Beis. Now, if you're making the chuppah on Asara B'Teves, says the Chavetz Chaim, va'asar oz hechasan lishtais mikoshel bracha. The chasan would not be allowed to drink from the kais of yayin that was used by the Sidi Kedushin. The Masadi Kedushin makes a hagafen, and usually the chasan drinks from that kais. The chasan is not going to be able to drink, because it's still earlier in the day. The tainus is still noig, it's still Asara B'Teves, so you can't drink. Rather, you would give it to a child to drink. Let's say you have a tainus that falls out on Shabbos and it was postponed to Sunday. So let's say Tisha B'Av, or let's say Shiva Asar B'Tammuz was on Shabbos, and it was a nidcha, it was postponed until Sunday. And you're having the chuppah on Sunday. In that case, yachal chasan lishtois b'kaish bracha, then the chasan would be permitted to drink from the kaish bracha. V'chein lechav lishtois achakach, and also he would be allowed to eat and drink after the chuppah, even though it's still the day of the tainus. Since this tainus is really only a nidcha, it's not really the day that the tainus is supposed to be. Just the tainus was postponed from Shabbos to Sunday. We're mekel. Let's say somebody has a personal fast day. Somebody has a day that he fasts on for whatever reason, and now his chuppah is taking place on that day. Ein tzarich lahashlim. He doesn't have to fill out his tainus. Once he gets to the chuppah, he could drink the yayin and he could eat and drink. So too, if one of these fast days fall out during somebody's Sheva Brachas, Yashlim Tanisai, he does have to complete the fast. Aval Yartzeit, but if somebody has Yartzeit for a father or a mother, and he has the minhag to fast on the day of his parents' yahrzeit. Ein tzarich lehisan le'spesach shivas yemei chuppah. If the yahrzeit falls out during Sheva brachas, the chassan is not required to fast. Im nasa basula. If he's marrying a girl that was never married before, a bachar almana, or if he's a bachar and he's marrying a woman that was married previously, but still there's a great simcha since he's a bachar, and therefore he would not have to fast for the yahrzeit that fell out during his Sheva brachas. Now there's another interesting footnote here. Dirshu footnote number 25. We had this Ramah. The Ramah is discussing a case where you're making a chuppah on Asara B'Teves. Asara B'Teves fell out on Erev Shabbos, and you're making a chuppah on Erev Shabbos. Sounds a little bit inappropriate. Sounds interesting to make a chuppah on the fast day of Asara B'Teves. So in Dirshu footnote number 25, they bring down here, Mashmais Divrei Ramah, the implication of the words of this Ramah is Shemota Laseis Nashim B'Shar Taaneisim, that really you're allowed to get married on a tainus. V'chein muva b'taisvis, and indeed Taisis in Erevin seems to say Shayamaisa b'chuppah ba'asar b'teves shenasnu l'tinoik lishtais, that there was a chuppah that took place on Asara B'Teves, and they gave the yayin to a tinoik to drink. So you see, you could make a chuppah on Asara B'Teves. Amnam, however, b'shal setshuvas pri asadeh kasav she'ein lisa nashim b'shar taaneisim, that you should not marry women on a tainus. Machbas divrei pri megadim sheyam tainus dinoi kemoi mirish chaydish av atishabav. You have a pri megadim that says that the status of the day of a tainus tzibur is similar to the status of the 9 days from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av. V'haisif, where certainly we don't make chasanas. V'haisif, and he adds, Shamasha Kasva Taisis Shahayu Nisuin B'Asar B'Teves, where Taisis in Erevin talks about a story where there was a chasan on Asar B'Teves. Tzarech Laimar, you have to say, Shezaha Yaba Alman Shenasa Almana, that this was talking about a widow, a widower who was marrying a widow. She'ein bazeh simcha kol kach, so there is no great simcha, and that would be something that would be allowable on Asara B'Teves. Now, the Ramah ends off over here in the parentheses, V'ayin le'el siman reish mem tes siv dalid im mashlim and atainus. He's speaking over there about a tainus that falls out on Erev Shabbos, right? That's what it's a reference to. A tainus that falls out on Erev Shabbos, I believe. Give me 1 second. I did check on this beforehand, but it slipped my mind. Yeah, whenever you have a fast day on Friday, so the question is, in Mashlim and Atainus, do you complete the fast when you have on a fast day like Asara B'Teves, let's say, falls out on Friday? Do you fast all the way until Tzeis HaKoichavim, which is already into Shabbos? So you're fasting on Shabbos or not? Okay. Now we go to Sif Dalet. It says the Mechaber. B'Shabbos Kaidim L'Tzayim, on the Shabbos that takes place before a fast day, Machriz Shliach Tzibor HaTzayim. The minhag was that the Shliach Tzibor or the Shamish would announce the fast. He would say that the fast of Asara B'Teves, let's say, falls out on Tuesday. Chutz mi Tisha B'Av v'Tzayim Kippur v'Tzayim Purim, with the exception of the fast days of Tisha B'Av, Yom Kippur, and Tainus Esther. V'simanech akaf alav pihu. And the siman to remember which fast days you don't need to announce is the word akaf. Akaf alav pihu. Aleph stands for Av, that's Tisha B'Av. Chav stands for Kippurim, Yom Kippur. And the Pei stands for Purim. So that's Tainus Esther. Those you do not have to announce. And the Ramah says that the minhag of Ashkenazim is not to announce any of the taaneisim. Boy, this is a real struggle. Now, what's the point over here? Why did they announce the taaneisim? The reason that they announced the taaneisim is because of something we learned already previously, which is we said that if you live in a generation where the non-Jewish governments are not making harsh decrees on Klal Yisrael, then the tainus of Asara B'Teves, the tainus of Asara B'Teves, the tainus of Tzom Gedalia are somewhat optional. And it's up to Klal Yisrael as a whole to decide are they being noig these taaneisim or not. Now we said that it's already long-standing that midar l'dar, for generations already, Klal Yisrael has accepted upon themselves these taaneisim. So we always fast them. However, since there was a certain aspect of optional to these fast days, it became a minig that the Shamash would announce them in shul. But this does not apply to Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, and Titus Esther. Those were never made optional, so there's no need to announce them. The minig of the Ashkenazim, the Ramah said, is not to announce any of them, because like I said, Klal Yisrael has already accepted upon themselves to fast these taaneisim all the time, so we really don't consider them optional in any way anymore. I was going to go a little bit weiter, Rabbi Sai, but my throat is not going to let me, so I'm going to stop over here. Mitzvah Hashem, next week we'll pick up with Siman Tav Kuf Nun Aleph. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should stand Gans Klal Yisrael in good stead. The Rabbi Hashem should be megan on Gans Klal Yisrael. And the Rabbi Hashem should check Yeshua's, Refuas, and Parnasa to all those in need. And we should be zeich to see the Bias Kal Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Have a wonderful Shabbos. See you next week. Be well.